We're still in the business of shaping policy and advancing development. Earlier when I said nurses in Nigeria, they are not happy, someone was wondering, why do I have to make that kind of statement? Yes, they're not. Not just nurses, the midwives as well, about the certificate verification exercise that came up recently, a regulation being made by the association, which some of them feel there's a need to reverse it. We have Catherine Olatunji-Kuyoro joining us from UK. Is a clinical nurse. Let's see how she's going to react to this development. Catherine, glad to have you join us on Early Extend this morning.
Thank you so much, Femi.
So how is UK this morning? You look radiant.
Oh. It's bright. It's a very nice weather today. The sun is out, it's shining. I think we're getting out of the winter season, and I'm happy about that.
You seem to be excited or comfortable with the new verification exercise, or you're just trying to move on to this?
No, nobody's moving on. We're also not very happy about it. Definitely we are not moving on. Nurses are still out there protesting. There was a protest yesterday in let me say peaceful work, not really protest, but just they are just trying to demonstrate that they are not happy about this. That was in Kano yesterday. We had one in Ibadan last week. We've had in Abuja, we've had in Lagos, and there's still going to be more protests. There was also Bayelsa. So definitely nurses are not happy. Even many nurses in diaspora, they are trying to lend their voice to make sure that they understand that this is not the way forward.
Well, can you take us through the critical issues here? What are the issues here? The bone of contention here. The essence of this is to standardize the profession. And I think nobody should kick against this. So where are the controversies coming from?
Yeah, let me thank you very much, Femi. Let me start from that word that you just used, standardized, because it's totally the opposite of what they are doing. If you say standardized, that means it should meet up with international standards and practices. But when you're doing something that is taking us like 60 years back, then that's not standardization. One of the major, okay, so many things that is just everything is actually wrong with that circular. Everything is wrong with the policy. The first thing about you being verified, just to explain what verification means. Verification is just you being able to prove to an employer or any established organization, educational, it can be educational purpose, it can be for a job purpose, that you are actually a registered nurse. So they want to verify that the document you're submitting to them, that the license that you claim you carry is actually valid. So you just need to, make an application to your regulatory body to say, I need you to verify this certificate of mine. They issued it, so they will verify it. So that's just verification. Now, for whatever reason that you want to use the verification for, they just need to verify that the document you submitted to that establishment or that body is actually valid. So why do we need to verify? And you're telling nurses they have to have 2 years post qualification. That's one. For a certificate that you've issued already to them, and you're saying they have to have a 2 years post qualification, then you went further to say they need to get a letter, they need to obtain a letter from a CEO of wherever they work or whatever institution that they have, and they still need to also wait for additional 6 months for them to be verified. And also they need to go back to their educational institution. Now, mind you, there are a lot of people that didn't even study in Nigeria, that maybe they came back to Nigeria to get licensed and to get, do their adaptation process and get licensed. So there are people that maybe they studied in Ukraine, for example. They studied in let me see, Ghana, and you're telling them they still need to go back to their school of educational institution to obtain a letter. We all know how rigorous all these things are for a license that has already been issued. And when you get your license or your certificate as a nurse, they will tell you that you fulfilled all obligations necessary, and they certify you to practice as a nurse. So why do I need to wait for 2 years to be verified? So it makes you understand that everything is wrong with that circular. I don't know where they adapted that from, but I'm very sure it's none of any of the developed countries, or maybe it's definitely, I don't want to say mention any country, because I couldn't find any country that is the kind of guidelines or criteria for them to be verified. So I really do not know where that emanated from.
All right, let's look at it this way. If it's not about standardization, what about if it's about keeping nurses here in Nigeria because of the brain drain that we're seeing? Because according to the NMCN, 15,000 nurses left Nigeria in 2023 alone. And in 3 years, 42,000 nurses have left Nigeria. So the 2 years post-qualification period, and then 6 months, including the other time that it would take to get verified. Let's say put together approximately 3 years. Do you think it's about keeping nurses in Nigeria so more do not leave within a 3-year period, so there's chance for others to come out of school and replace those who would leave, so it doesn't affect the health system?
I think it's definitely about keeping nurses, but to me, it's actually a failed attempt. I've used that word before because it's not going to work. If you want to keep your nurses, it's not by force, it's not by coercion. It's not like we are in the slavery period. This is not, because first thing first, these nurses solely sponsor themselves in school. They paid for their education. You can try to maybe find out or source around or ask around. We do not have scholarship for nursing like that. The government, you don't have any government scholarship for nursing. There's no funding available or anything. They sponsor themselves through school. There are parents that took loans, cooperatives, put in everything that they have to sponsor, whether by government, whether through government established educational institutions or private ones. They paid for that education. It was not the government that paid for it. They did it by themselves. So I'm wondering how, after you pay for something yourself and you get in your certificate, then you tell them they cannot go. Now, mind you, nursing is a 5 years program in the university. If you go to the university, it is 5 years. After your 5 years, you still have to do 1 year internship program. And you will still have to do the compulsory NYSC program. So that is actually 7 years of your life. Now you're telling that same nurse to have a post-qualification 2 years working experience. And that's 7, 8, 9. Then you still need to wait for at least 6 months. That's actually 10 years of your life just because you are a Nigerian. How does that make any sense? Now, I went to School of Nursing 3 years. I went to the School of Nursing 3 years. Then I went to the university after my School of Nursing. I went to the university for another 3 to 4 years. I didn't do the internship because I had a working experience already before I started my my BNSC program. Then I still had to do the NYSC program. I practically spent 9 years of my life just because I'm studying nursing. So how will you tell anybody? And this is education that they paid for. So I feel if you want them to stay, what you should be thinking about is how can we improve their welfare? What do these nurses need? You look at the etiology. Why are they leaving? You get people, you get stakeholders together. You don't just make a policy by force and say you must stay. You have to work for 2 years and you wait for 6 months. It doesn't make any sense. It's not going to work because when the 2 years is completed, nurses will leave. Even if they have to wait for the 6 months, they will wait and they will leave. What would be the excuse then? If you do not solve the etiology of the issue, then we are not making any headway. So I believe if you want nurses to stay, you should think about the reasons why they are leaving. Then address the reasons why they are leaving. Then they will stay. And let me also say, it is not only Nigeria that is suffering a brain drain. If they say there's a brain drain, which I do not agree to, all the figures you're saying, it's not even up to 5% of the number of registered nurses in Nigeria. So that is actually not a brain drain. Many institutions today, they have a number of graduates every year. And usually you have 2 years in a year. 2 times they are always nurses graduates in May, and you have also in around November. So in a year, a school produces graduates twice in a year. So I don't believe that there's any. And now, if there is even a brain drain, like they are saying, there are other countries that are also suffering this. They do not do this to their nurses. They don't tell them you have to work for 2 years. There's a way they try to solve the issue. Presently in the UK, they're also still talking about the brain drain. Many of them finish nursing and they just pick their bags and go. People are free to go anywhere they want to go and practice. You tell them to go for the course, they decided to do that. So you cannot force them to stay. So I believe if they want to actually contain movement or migration of nurses in the country, then they need to treat the etiology and address the reason why they are leaving. Thank you.
Well, if I heard you correctly, the genesis of this revelation or controversies has to do with the fact that the welfare of nurses are not being prioritized. Now, let's give a scenario, maybe by miracle or by chance, this welfare or the issue of welfareism are being prioritized, they are being taken care of. Will it make any difference? And then how do you think this issue of verification exercise should be handled differently? Because it's important to also have this done. Maybe the grasp is the fact that the format of the verification exercise, what could have been done differently, or how could it have been done differently in your own view?
Okay, I will start by answering the last question, then we'll go to the first question. Now, usually, verification, presently we are practicing, is just 24 hours. That is if you want to send it by a post. If you want them to send it by email, it's immediately. They get it through the inbox. All you need to do is go on your portal, apply to be verified, put in the email address of the recipient or whoever it is that you want them to send your verification documents to. It's just a statement of entry. It will contain when you were put on the register, when your license is going to expire, and if you are actually licensed to practice for the moment. And that's it. So, but if you want to say that, oh, I want you to send it by post, like receive a hard copy letter, then it will take 24 hours. This is a country. That is what is called standard. If you go to another country, it's even free for NMC UK. It's actually free. You don't need to pay a cover. You don't pay anything. Now, if you go to somewhere like US, United States, because of their different states, so they have different standards of how you apply for verification. But I'm still telling you, it doesn't take. It's so seamless. It's a seamless process. All you need is to apply, and that's how you'll be verified. So if they are trying to actually copy or adapt international standard and practices, that is how it's done. A simple Google check would have provided the NMCN on how things are actually done. Now, let me go to the second question, the first question you asked, and you said, if by any miracle or miraculously, the problems facing nurses are being addressed, will nurses stay? I would say definitely yes. Of course, people are still free to migrate, but there is no reason why anyone will have all of these things put in place and they will still want to leave. You can leave for other reasons. People leave for other reasons. But I'm telling you, the major reasons why nurses are leaving is because we work in it's the appalling conditions that we work. Some people do, they can't have a grasp. Some people can't even comprehend it. When nurses complain about these things, they don't understand it because they are not in their shoes. Now, let me start from recruitment. When I left school, I remember when I was just a new graduate and I was looking for a job, I applied to Ogun State Management Board, Health Board. We paid for forms. I think this was about 2,000 naira or something. There are different petty money that you have to pay. Everything went to like maybe 5,000 naira, receipts here, one money here, one money there. 5,000 naira for a person that is jobless, that doesn't have a job. I paid that. Other states too. I think I applied to 2-3 states. I was ready to move to any of the states. I was never called. I was only called for an interview for one of the states. And I was called like 8 months after. And I still never got a job. So one, the government is not recruiting as much as they should recruit nurses. They are presently even government hospitals, they are short-staffed. Many of them, many retired nurses are not being replaced. So they do not really recruit nurses. Here in the UK, you have student nurses who are just almost, they're not even done with their programs, actually. They're already having pre-interviews, they're having pre-employment interviews, they're already fixing them in different government hospitals. So job is never an issue. Nigeria, you can't even find a job. Femi, I'm telling you, I was home for 2 years, jobless, registered nurse, a graduate. I was selling shoes, I was selling bags, I was selling clothes because I couldn't get a job. I went to one of the expensive schools in Nigeria, Babcock University. I finished from Babcock University. And imagine me going about to all these private hospitals that want to pay me 25,000 naira, pay me 30,000 naira. I take it. When am I going to even 1 year or one session of my school fees back if I'm being paid 25,000 naira for the kind of skills that I possess? So I just decided to switch into business. That is the plight of some nurses right now. I had the choice. Some people do not. They would take that job, 25,000 naira. They will still work under inhumane conditions, appalling conditions. And how will that not affect your sight? It just affects your head there. Then you see other nurses doing well outside the country. You ask yourself, why am I still here? Why am I still here? Even if you work with the government institutions, the salaries are not regular. They're still not paid. Many of the states, some states are working, like Lagos State, for example, kudos to them, but some states are not. Their salaries are not regular. They do not recruit as much. Now, let me leave recruitment. Let's come to welfare of these nurses. When you start working, usually, I will tell you, apart from nurses being responsible for their education, 100%, nurses are also responsible for their trainings. You can ask many nurses, many of the skills they acquired were paid by them. You pay for it. You're the one that is sourcing out to say, oh, there's this cost here. Let me try to pay for it. There's this cost. They're not concerned about you developing in skills, skills acquisition, career development. The government is not concerned about it. If a nurse can actually be there for years without having any training, no mandatory training, no sponsored training by any of these government establishments, many times when they even get training, it's by NGOs, sponsored by NGOs or maybe private companies. So what are you getting from the government? There's no funding for you. There's no career development, no professional development. The pay is poor. You look at your pay slip as a registered nurse. It is nothing to write home about. There's no difference between your whole 7 years in school and everything that you think you've done. There's actually no difference when you look at comparing with other people that they didn't even go anywhere. This is not to insult anybody, but there should be something. There should be something. You want to think about it, that what do I want to take home? The pay is ridiculously low. Is it the welfare? I've worked in a government institution, I'm not going to mention any name, that you don't even have water to wash your hands as nurses. There's nothing for you to work with. Is it needle and syringe? You will actually buy them yourself. You will keep it somewhere, and you try to look at the patients that are coming to you, and you prioritize with your own money. I cannot count how many times I've had to buy medications for people, for patients with my own money. Get 25 liters keg and put water in it because there's no water to flush if I use the toilet. With I still need to make sure I have water for myself. Where does that happen? Only in Nigeria, I believe. So you look at all of these conditions and you ask yourself, why do I need to stay? Quackery is the order of the day in our country. Call them Nurse Eliza, I know that. But they are not even nurses. Nurses are struggling. Registered nurses, actual registered nurses, are struggling with Nurse Elizas about in Nigeria. You work in many of these private hospitals, they are infiltrated, they are filled up with quacks. The government will still try to tell you that they are not going to employ more nurses. And you have community health extension workers trying to do the job of a nurse. And you have to say, why should I stay in this kind of condition? Nobody cares about nurses. I will say it, nobody cares about nurses in Nigeria. People don't actually care about it. So you have to say, what's the point? So I believe If all of these things are put into place, welfare, professional development, recruitment, you are recruiting them in masses. You are not trying to say because you're saving costs, then you recruit 2 registered nurses and 8 community health extension workers. I don't know whether you know about community health extension workers. They are supposed to be in the community, help with community mobilization, health issues and all of that. They've got their own clear jobs, but what we see right now is people doing other people's job. So that's what is happening. So when you want to pay nurses 100,000 naira, you might pay the community health extension workers maybe 50,000 naira, 60. So you're saving costs. That is what the government has been doing. That the private hospitals are not even paying well. I do not blame them. Healthcare is actually expensive. They also need to make money. But when there are legislations in place, when there are policies in place that protect the right of a nurse, that protects the working conditions of a nurse, that listens, that invests funding, allocations, is going to really help. So that is what I believe.
Cares about nurses. How true is this? Your colleagues in the health sector, doctors for instance, do you think the situation is any different for them?
I'm not a doctor, so I might not really be able to answer them, but I'm very sure that the problems that we face, basically, I'm sure they're facing their own part of their own problem. When it comes to pay, when it comes to recruitment also. I'm not in their shoes, really. I know they have their own problems, but I will say that but doctors, when you think about it, many of them are politically oriented. So many of them are in corners, like in the Senate, in the ministry, and things like that. So they know how to make sure they come in and say that, no, these policies will not go on, if you get what I mean. But for many nurses, they are mostly laid back. They are mostly laid back. So I think that is why maybe they are able to mitigate, let me use that word. Maybe doctors are able to mitigate some of these things for themselves, but I really cannot answer that because I'm not a doctor, really. So I'm only concerned about nurses. I should have, yeah, but I'm only concerned about nurses.
I understand you're a nurse after all, but let's engage what you just said about nurses being laid back, because when any intervention is going to be done for nurses, it's not going to be done for nurses alone as a profession. It's going to go to the health sector. And you have your unions, you have your associations. Even in hospitals, there's been like a sort of dominance of doctors and maybe other medical professionals in those associations and unions. Now, back to the laid-back nature of nurses. Do you think that has been the undoing of the profession? The people who are in that profession not pushing enough for policies that will impact them positively?
I will say that I don't agree with that, because presently there are ATAMs, that's the National Association of Nurses and Midwives, and we have the national one. The only thing I might agree with is that at the national level, I think the NAM, that's the Association of Nurses, are not being effective. The leadership has not really been encouraging. It's not something that a lot of nurses are happy about. And I think sometimes some other professionals also face this kind of things. And maybe possibly in the next general election, there might be a change. But yes, presently, I will say that the NAM at the national level have not been so proactive when it comes to the welfare surrounding nurses. Now, another thing is that they might actually be doing something, but communication is key. If we do not know what you're doing, how do we know you're doing something? So my understanding is that at the national level, they have not been so proactive. And even if they're doing anything, they've not been communicating to us. But at the state level, I would say that many of the states unionism at the state level has really been good. Because when the circular came out, the state unions, I saw a lot of they were releasing their statements, kicking against the policies, which is really commendable. So they are trying to make sure, putting pressure on the national level to make sure that they do something. Not all nurses are laid back. I wasn't a laid back person when I was practicing in Nigeria, but you can't have the same personality for everybody. But I would just say that because we have more women in nursing, it's actually another factor, because you think of at that time I was single, I wasn't married, so I had the time on my hands. But by the time you start having other additional responsibilities, sometimes you just weigh it. Do this matter than this? You prioritize. So I think maybe that's what happens to a lot of people. But yeah, they're still very active vocal nurses in Nigeria, and they're doing all their best to make sure that they put pressure on the national body to be more proactive, to get at the forefront of these things and make sure that something good comes out for nurses.
Well, Catherine, I must say we understand how you feel, which is the essence of having this kind of conversation to see how we can shape this kind of policy and make it better. It's important to also hear from the horse's mouth. But let me put it this way. Can you give us a picture of the kind of verification exercise taking place in UK, the kind of approach to it, the template? You're there. Maybe from that example, the association here could also learn some lessons. Take us through or give us a picture of the verification exercise in UK compared to what we have here and areas they can improve on.
Thank you very much. I think I answered that the other time. And I said you only need, for you to be verified, you want to have a verification process in the UK, you only need to log into your portal. You go to your portal, you go to the area where it says verification or validation. And you can just put in the recipient's email. If it's your email, I want them to send it to, I just put in Femi, so, and that is it. You get it within minutes or hours. But if you need to have an hard copy of that thing, you can just send them. They will send it by post, which takes 24 hours. Another thing is you can download your statement of entry. If you don't need to go through all that, put an email address or them sending it, you can just download your statement of entry, which states when you were put on the register, when your license is going to expire, and that you are licensed to practice for this period, because usually renew your license. So they will just tell that all of those things are stated there, where you work, who's your employer, if you need to. But the only thing that you might not have there is the personal details, like where you work, your date of birth or something like that. But every other thing is right there that is very necessary. And you send this statement of entry, you send it to whoever you want to send it to. It's so seamless. I don't even need to meet anybody. I don't need to talk to anybody about it. I don't need to bother the NMC UK or anything. You right there. If I want to do it right now, within few seconds or 30 seconds, I have it already, and I can just email it to whoever I want to send it to. It's as simple as that, really. It doesn't need to be a tug of war for you to just get verified or on a license that you issued already. That's how it's been done. It's not done that way. So definitely not done that way. And that's why I said earlier on that that is not standardization. That is actually not standardization. That was clear. To me, it's so clear. It's like taking us to 60 years back, like we were still in the slavery era, and because you want to contain nurses or you want to mitigate migration, then it is by force and coercion. Things are not done that way. This is 2024. We need to know how to consult, how to mediate, how to get key stakeholders together, talk about the issue, address their concerns, provide solutions to those things. Then you are actually trying to make progress. It's not by force, not by coercion. That's what I believe.
All right, about this issue, the National Association of Nurses and Midwives have also officially stated their displeasure over the new guidelines. So, and you've mentioned that there have been protests in some states. So what if at the end of the day, the NMC end is not given to the pressure from nurses and maintains this new guidelines? Do you foresee that situation happening?
No, I don't let me say that they might not they might actually still say that the criteria should go on, because to me there are other ways where issues can be addressed. The first thing is protesting. I'm sure there are lots of people trying to consult, mediate, and have open dialogue. And there's also the legal address also. I don't think anybody can stop anyone from taking it to the court, because if you cannot say you go on with a criteria that we all know it is not right. It is not right. There's nobody that listens to this and say, oh, it is right. Nobody with a sane mind will say it is right. So we know it is not right. So I believe there are other measures, other approach. The first one is protest. They might force nurses to down too, and nobody wants that. Because I feel even if you're concerned about nurses, it shows that you're also concerned about the parents. Nobody wants to work or be taken care of by a nurse that's psychologically up there. They are not okay. So nobody wants to be taken care by that kind of a nurse. So they should also be concerned about Nigerians' welfare. If nurses are not happy, how do they give their best? How do Nigerians receive quality nursing care from them? So if they are really so passionate about Nigerians and they think about Nigerians' welfare, then whatever affects nurses should be number one thing on their item to make sure that they resolve. So I believe that there are other ways to make sure that we express our displeasure about it. So they will be able to explore other areas.
Right, let's wrap up with this. I'm going to put you on the spot now. Don't mind me. If you're in position to make recommendations on how the welfare of nurses can be addressed, what should be the priorities? What are your recommendations? Quickly.
Okay. My recommendations quickly. The first thing is recruitment. The government should try to make sure there's no nurse looking for a job. It is not right for a nurse to be jobless for a year, 6 months. It is not right. Then the pay is ridiculous. Increase the pay of nurses. We've been saying this for years. Nurses are not being paid. Then when it comes to nursing education, subsidize it. Let there be funding, let there be scholarships. There's no scholarship for nurses anywhere. Many parents, they solely sponsored their words to school. So they need to try and at least allocate some funding for scholarship for nursing, funding for the kind of places they study, institutions that meet up with international standard. Another thing is the welfare, the surroundings, the conditions that nurses work in. It is terrible for me. If you see some government institutions, you see the toilet, the things they have, the nursing station, nurses changing room, all of these basic amenities, they are not things to work with. It is just terrible. They need to improve it. Then when it comes to professional and career development, something needs to be done. ECG, I'll say the government, because NMCN is still part of the government. So it's a government, is a parastatal of the government. So how do they put it? So they are still the ones making sure that the scope of practice for nurses is improved. It meets up with the this advanced word that we have. It's not the scope of practice of 1999 that we are still being using in 2024. Health is dynamic. Health needs are ever changing. So it should meet up. Scope of practice should be improved. They need to work with that. It should be a basic thing for nurses to be able to do ECGs, catheterize, it's not in 2024 we still have nurses being penalized for putting in a cannula. It's disgraceful. It's embarrassing. So they need to work on all of these things. Clear job boundaries. Improve the scope practice. They also need to expand allocation, like funding healthcare, the funding they do, or allocation of funds they do for healthcare. Expand it. Put nurses as one of your priorities. Give them trainings. Sponsor their trainings. For the student nurses, you can even have exchange programs, let them see what is happening out there. Meet up. When we leave home, even when we go to other countries, we should be able to say, yeah, there's not much difference. But you come here, you'll be like, oh my God, where have I been practicing? It's just crazy. So I believe if you put in all of these things together, recruitment is good, the pay is good, the welfare conditions is good, there's enough funding and allocation for training, professional development, standardized scope of practice that meets up with this 2024 is going to be really, really good. These are things that will help nurses to say they want to stay. Also, even education is expensive. It is really expensive. expensive. They can help. They can help. Many of these government institutions, School of Nursing, government institutions, they can help. They can subsidize it. If you think you are having braiding, you don't have enough nurses, let nurses' school fees be cut into half or something. There are ways they can make sure they just encourage more people to study nurses. So when you have more graduates and there are jobs waiting for them, why would they want to go? So I believe all of these things are things that will actually help to see that, oh yeah, I want to stay back in my country and practice. Then security. I cannot count how many times we've had nurses being kidnapped and we'll be putting money together to say, oh, they need to pay ransom. It's just crazy. How can you be practicing and you're not safe? Violence against nurses. I've had to run away when I was practicing one time. They'll just come into the hospital, beating, kicking. There's nothing that protects you. Nothing protects you. You have to protect yourself. When you talk about legislation also, or legislation, something needs to do. The title nurse needs to be protected. Quackery is everywhere. A common Nigerian do not even know how to recognize a registered nurse. Everybody in the hospital is a nurse. Protect the title nurse. Let there be
I wish we could allow you go on for a longer time, but we need to end the show. Indeed, you've proved that you're not a laid-back nurse because you've been so active. And I see the passion with which you speak about improvement for the profession. And we do hope that happens in quick time. Thank you very much, Olatunji-Kuyoro, for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.